In the world of professional wrestling, immortality comes at a price. For over 3 decades, The Undertaker stood as the most feared. A world that combined performance, physicality, and storytelling in a way no other sport could. Did Mark Calaway know that stepping into the ring would forever alter his life? Or could anyone imagine that the quiet Texan would become one of the most enduring characters in wrestling history? Mark's wrestling journey began in 1987 when he debuted under the ring name Texas Red in World Class Championship Wrestling WCCW. Trained by Buzz Sawyer and influenced by Texas legends, he showed early signs of raw talent. But the business was unforgiving. Wrestling wasn't just about strength, it demanded resilience, charisma, and the ability to connect with audiences. Mark experimented with different personas in the late 80s, wrestling under names like the Master of Pain and the Punisher. Presence. He wasn't just another big man in the ring, he moved differently. He had an aura that hinted at something greater. Still, success didn't come overnight. For years, he wrestled in small promotions, often traveling endless miles, sometimes barely making enough money to cover food and gas. Have you ever wondered what it takes to keep chasing a dream when the world doesn't yet see your potential? For Mark, it was persistence. He believed in himself even when opportunities seemed scarce. In 1989, Mark's big break seemed to arrive when he signed with World Championship Wrestling WCW. Wrestling as Mean Mark Callis, he was paired with manager Paul E. Dangerously later known as Paul Heyman. Despite his imposing look and in-ring ability, WCW didn't see him as a future star. In fact, executives told him outright that he would never be a main event attraction. That rejection could have crushed his spirit, but instead it became fuel. Mark would later recall the moment as a turning point in his life, proving that sometimes being underestimated is the greatest motivation a performer can have. He knew he had more to offer, and destiny was quietly preparing something extraordinary for him. Have you ever been told you weren't good enough? How would you respond to accept defeat or to prove everyone wrong? In 1990, fate finally intervened. Mark got the opportunity to meet Vince McMahon, the chairman of the World Wrestling Federation, now WWE. During the meeting, McMahon had one question on his mind. Could this towering athlete bring a larger-than-life character to life? The answer, as the world would soon discover, deathly stare. He immediately captured attention. Fans were both terrified and mesmerized. The Undertaker wasn't just a gimmick, he was a phenomenon. Overnight, Mark Calaway became more than a wrestler. He became a legend in the making. The character resonated deeply because it tapped into primal fears. Dressed in dark attire with pale skin and an unblinking glare, The Undertaker embodied death itself. Children in the audience clung to their parents, unsure if what they were witnessing was real. Adults couldn't look away. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't loud. He was something far more powerful, mysterious. In those early matches, The Undertaker displayed not just size but agility. He could walk the top rope with perfect balance, a move fans would call old school. He sold the idea that he was impervious to pain. Backstage, respected by fellow wrestlers for his professionalism and loyalty to the business. While The Undertaker terrified audiences in the ring, Mark was known to be approachable, but it came with sacrifices that only grew heavier with time. Have you ever admired someone's success without realizing the personal price they paid to achieve it? For Mark Calaway, that price was just beginning to reveal itself. The birth of The Undertaker wasn't just the creation of a character, it was the transformation of Mark Calaway's entire life. From a young Texan athlete with dreams of basketball to the chilling Deadman, another character in the colorful world of WWE. He was a living nightmare who blurred the line between reality and fiction. From the very moment the lights dimmed and the haunting gong echoed through arenas, fans were transported into another world. The Deadman's slow, deliberate walk down the aisle sent chills down spines, and his matches often for the WWE Championship at Survivor Series 1991 was a moment that stunned fans worldwide. Few believed a newcomer could topple the immortal Hulk Hogan, yet The Undertaker did it, and with chilling ease. Then came his battles with legends like Jake, the Snake, Roberts, Yokozuna, and King Kong Bundy. Each rivalry further defined The Undertaker's character, proving that he wasn't just a one-time attraction, but a force who belonged in the main event scene. Unlike other performers who relied on flashy moves or fiery promos, The Undertaker's power was in silence, aura, and storytelling through physicality. But what truly elevated his myth was the element of fear. Coffin matches, casket matches, and bizarre storylines with supernatural themes blurred. Fans weren't sure, and that uncertainty kept them glued to their screens. Bearer brought a chilling dimension to the Deadman's mythos. Together, they were unstoppable. Paul Bearer's eerie promos and the mysterious power of the urn created an aura that made fans believe The Undertaker was fueled by something supernatural. It wasn't just wrestling, it was theater, horror, and drama rolled into one. The bond between The Undertaker and Paul Bearer wasn't only professional. Behind the scenes, Mark Calloway and William Moody shared genuine respect and friendship. For Mark, Bearer's presence gave him more freedom to let the character breathe without having to cut endless promos himself. This partnership became one of the most iconic duos in wrestling history. The Undertaker's early years were filled with gothic imagery, slow, methodical matches, supernatural powers, and endless casket matches. But what truly separated him from others was his ability to evolve. By the mid-90s, fans had begun to crave something new, and many gimmicks of the early era faded away, but The Undertaker adapted. He transitioned into darker, more complex storylines, feuding with monsters like Mankind, played by Mick Foley. Their brutal battles, including the infamous 1996 Boiler Room Brawl and the 1998 Hell in a Cell match, redefined hardcore wrestling in WWE. The sight of The Undertaker throwing Mankind off the top of the cell, a 16-foot drop through the announcer's table, remains one of the most shocking moments in wrestling history. But behind that shocking moment was the question: how much pain was Mark Calloway enduring to keep the character alive? How many nights did he spend icing his body, hiding the injuries that piled up with every match? Perhaps the greatest element of The Undertaker's legacy was the tension, the drama, and the storytelling were unlike anything else in WWE. Can you imagine the pressure of carrying an undefeated streak for over 2 decades? Every year, the stakes grew higher, and every year, Mark had to deliver not just a performance, but a moment fans would never forget. In 2000, after nearly a decade as the Deadman, Mark made a bold decision to reinvent himself as the American Badass. Riding to the ring on a motorcycle, dressed in leather and denim, he transformed into a biker persona that reflected more of his real personality. Fans were divided at first, but the change allowed him to showcase new dimensions of his character. This version of The Undertaker feuded with The Rock, Kurt Angle, and Brock Lesnar, proving that he didn't need supernatural elements to remain a dominant force. It was a risk, but it kept him relevant in a rapidly changing wrestling landscape. And when the time came, he seamlessly returned to the darker, supernatural Deadman persona, proving his ability to adapt like no one else. While The Undertaker's legacy was soaring, Mark Calloway's body was paying the price. Wrestling through torn muscles, broken bones, and endless surgeries, he often hid his pain from the audience. The schedule was relentless, and unlike many stars who took time off, Mark prided himself on loyalty. He believed in protecting the character and giving fans the spectacle they expected. But behind the curtain, he was human, struggling with injuries, personal challenges, and the weight of being an icon. To maintain immortality in the eyes of millions, he had to sacrifice parts of himself that fans would never see. Have you ever admired someone's strength, only to realize later how much suffering was hidden beneath the surface? That was the reality of Mark Calloway during these years. By the end of the 1990s and into the 2000s, The Undertaker was more than a wrestler. He was an institution. From terrifying children with his supernatural persona to delivering unforgettable matches at WrestleMania, he had cemented himself as one of the greatest performers of all time. But as his legacy grew, so did the toll it took on his mind, body, and spirit. The Undertaker was no longer just chasing greatness, he was carrying the heavy burden of maintaining it, and in the years to come that burden would test him more than ever. By the mid-2000s, The Undertaker was no longer just a cornerstone of WWE, he was the soul of the company. Younger wrestlers entering the locker room looked up to him with reverence, referring to him as the Judge. For his leadership and discipline, fans saw him as immortal, a larger-than-life figure who defied age, pain, and even time itself. But the truth, hidden behind the smoke and theatrics, was that Mark Calloway's body was breaking down. Every step toward the ring was becoming heavier, every match demanded more sacrifice, and every performance chipped away at the man behind the myth. The Undertaker's mystique relied on his aura of invincibility. To the audience, he seemed untouchable, shrugging off chair shots, surviving falls through tables, and enduring punishing matches that left opponents about the weight of carrying perfection. Imagine knowing millions of people around the world expect you to be flawless, year after year. Could anyone truly live under that kind of burden? Then came April 6, 2014, WrestleMania 30 in New Orleans. The Undertaker faced Brock Lesnar, a man known for his raw power and intensity. Fans filled the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, confident that once again the streak would continue. But what happened that night changed WWE forever. After a grueling battle, Lesnar delivered an F5, and the referee's hand struck the mat for the third time. The bell rang. The Undertaker's WrestleMania record now stood at 21-1. Silence fell over the crowd. Some fans cried, others stared in disbelief. The aura of immortality had been shattered. Backstage, Mark was in no condition to celebrate or even walk. He had suffered a severe concussion during the match and barely remembered finishing it. He was rushed to a hospital, his career once again hanging by a thread. The streak's end was shocking, controversial, and heartbreaking. But perhaps more importantly, it revealed the truth: The Undertaker wasn't immortal. He was a man who had given everything, and now for the first time seemed vulnerable. The years after the streak ended were filled with reflection. For Mark, it was no longer just about living up to the legend, it was about battling time itself. He continued to wrestle, facing stars like Bray Wyatt, Shane McMahon, and Roman Reigns, but the toll became more visible. Fans began to ask, when would The Undertaker finally rest in peace? Should he step away before the legend was tarnished? Or was he destined to fight until his body could no longer carry him forward? These questions weren't just on the minds of fans, they weighed heavily on Mark himself. He struggled with the idea of letting go. Wrestling had defined him for decades. Without The Undertaker, who was Mark Calloway, have you ever faced the fear of letting go of something that has defined your entire existence? Behind the curtain, Mark Calloway was a husband and a father. His family saw the pain he carried, both physical and emotional. He often spoke about the sacrifices he made, missing birthdays, school events, and precious time with loved ones because of the demands of his career. His wife, Michelle McCool, became one of his greatest Undertaker but boneyard match. The Undertaker delivered one final masterpiece, mixing action, drama, and supernatural flair. The match felt like a Hollywood production, tailor-made for the Deadman's swan song. Fans hailed it as the perfect farewell, a blend of The Undertaker's myth with Mark Calloway's humanity. Later that year, WWE released The Last Ride, a 5-part documentary that pulled back the curtain on Mark Calloway's life. For the first time, fans saw the man behind the legend in raw, vulnerable detail. They watched as he struggled with injuries, questioned his place in the business, and wrestled with the idea of retirement. Mark admitted that he feared walking away. Without wrestling, who was he? Could he truly exist without the character that had defined him for over 30 years? The documentary revealed a truth that many suspected but few had seen. The Undertaker was human. He was a husband, a father, and a man facing the same fears and uncertainties as anyone else. Have you ever faced the terrifying thought of losing your identity, the one thing that made you who you are? That was the battle Mark Calloway fought in his final years. On November 22, 2020, exactly 30 years after his debut, The Undertaker gave his official farewell at Survivor Series. Legends of the Tour to younger wrestlers, a leader in the locker room, and a symbol of loyalty to WWE. The Undertaker wasn't just a character, he was a cultural phenomenon. Today, Mark Calaway lives away from the spotlight, embracing life as a husband and father. For the first time in decades, he can enjoy the simple pleasures he once sacrificed. He spends time with his wife, Michelle, and their children, exploring a quieter, more peaceful chapter of life. But even in retirement, the shadow of The Undertaker lingers. Fans still chant his name, still rise when the gong echoes in tribute videos, still remember the moments that defined him. Perhaps that is the true price of immortality. Mark Calaway gave his body, his health, and his youth to create a legend that will never die. In return, he will be remembered forever, not just as a wrestler, but as the Phenom. The Undertaker's story is one of sacrifice, reinvention, and legacy. He endured pain, heartbreak, and doubt to create. His story will echo through the halls of WWE, whispered every time the lights dim and the gong sounds. Because in the end, immortality isn't about living forever, it's about being remembered forever. Which Undertaker moment lives forever in your memory? The one that still gives you chills to this day.